Hello and welcome to a special edition of And Beyond. We are live from Origins Game Fair in Columbus, Ohio. We are kicking off hours of interviews and updates that will culminate in a live play session where Dwarven Forge will exclusively reveal a build from their upcoming Kickstarter 6 Return to the Caverns. I've gotten a sneak peek, and trust me, you do not want to miss this. I am Adam Bradford. I'm joined at this amazing table provided by our friends at Wormwood by esteemed fellow adventurers, Chris Perkins, Jeremy Crawford, last but not least, my co-host for this shindig, Mr. Todd Kenrick.
That's me. I'm the content director. I do stuff. Why don't we just throw this open right now? Let's just like...
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Let's
Nate
just
won't
pull it
mind
open.
at all.
Because until you told me it was Dwarven Forge under there, I thought actually the Wicked Witch of the West had melted on this table.
Obviously, that's what happened.
Yeah.
A little water.
It's Origins. Things happen. Is it okay if we just jump right
Let's
into the
jump
interview?
right into it.
Oh, yeah.
Unless you want to talk about like Wonder Woman for like 30 minutes like we do.
Oh, watch out.
Yeah, okay.
Wonder Woman's a good
Yes.
film.
Jeremy and I talk about a lot of pop culture before
Yes.
our actual interview,
Yes.
much to the detriment of our time. So let's talk about Waterdeep, Dungeon of the Mad Mage. This is kind of a big question, but what was your favorite bit about each? Is there like one aspect of either of them, whether it's an idea, whether it's a villain, whether it's a dungeon lair? Was there something that really stood out where you're like super excited?
The idea of having a campaign based around a city of the size of Waterdeep, with as much character that the city has, was very interesting. And just knowing the lore of Waterdeep, that it's got this huge dungeon underneath it just waiting to gobble up the adventurers at some point, made it kind of irresistible.
Yeah. For me, so about Dragon Heist, my favorite thing is basically city as toy box, where you have all these different things to play with. And then my favorite thing about Dungeon of the Mad Mage is that each dungeon is in a way a standalone adventure, and many of them are zany. I think a DM is going to have a great time running through that entire campaign or just plucking individual levels out.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, you could basically airlift those levels and drop them into any campaign setting, build a story around them.
Yeah.
So especially, I'm a DM who's a kit basher. I love to take things other people have created and then make them my own. So these two books, in a way, are built for DMs like me. It's like, oh, give me all these goodies, and I'm going to tinker and build a thing to my taste.
Dragon Heist tries to get you so invested in the city that you don't want to leave. But at some point, around 5th level, we sort of expect the characters are going to want to go somewhere else. And Undermountain is a natural lure, but the way Undermountain is created is it's an in and out experience. So you can come and go, which means the DM can pull the characters out of Waterdeep for a while to go on some other adventure, but then they can always come back to Undermountain if they're looking for something to do.
Or push them out.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
What I like about Dungeon of the Mad Mage is it almost sounds like a stack of modules, and which is like an old school thing.
Yes.
But that has me very
and
excited.
it's great from a design point of view, from a creative point of view, because every level's kind of got its own bosses and themes and feel and atmosphere. And so we got to create a bunch of basically mini villains running around in the dungeon that DMs can play with.
What did Diablo play into that at all, like from a video game perspective? Because when you play in Diablo, you town portal back and forth,
Yes.
between that.
Yes.
And it sounds very similar to that.
Yeah, the structure of Undermountain, because it's the Mad Mage himself, Hallister, likes to use gates in the dungeon to teleport people around. It has a very Diablo feel. Now, Undermountain predates Diablo,
It
so
does.
it's hard.
So the question really should be,
Yes.
is Diablo
Blow it.
based on Undermountain?
That's good. So,
There's
speaking
definitely
of
some
villains, though,
Yeah.
Dragon Heist in particular, and then obviously as the titular Mad Mage, makes an appearance in that book. But we have 4 different kind of primary antagonists.
Right.
And when I heard about this book and the way that it approaches the seasons, I was just enamored. Talk a little more about that.
So, Dragon Heist, it takes place in Waterdeep, but the DM decides what season the adventure unfolds during. And the choice of season determines the villain, or vice versa. the DM gets married to one of the 4 villain options, and then the villain that they choose determines the season which the story unfolds. The reason we did that was twofold. One, we like the idea of just showing off Waterdeep at different times of the year because there are dramatic changes to the city that happen over the course of seasons. Like, for instance, winters in Waterdeep are very, very harsh, and people tend to lock themselves in their homes, and the gates to the city close, all trade is cut off, the harbor freezes over. It's very, very different from like Waterdeep in the summer when a heat spell sort of settles on the city and everybody's airing themselves out in the open and socializing, and there are all these parades and festivals happening. So it was an opportunity for us to just bring the city to life at various times of the year. The other thing is, when we were breaking the story, we didn't have a particular villain in mind to be the one who's challenging the heroes or trying to steal the gold that is sort of the thread, the main plot thread of the story. So we just put on a whiteboard a bunch of ideas of who the villain could be, and then kind of just hedged our bets and said, why have one when we can just have multiples? Right. We can structure the story around each of them and give them each a different reason for wanting the treasure.
So is there any flexibility built in to have all 4 of them take a part? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, because you could decide to play through all 4 seasons and tweak the story along the way.
Right.
Part of our motivation here is also we love the idea of a DM feeling like he or she has agency right from the start. I mean, this is something that was originally explored in D&D way back in the original Ravenloft of, you do this card reading at the beginning that can change the whole course of the adventure. So here, it's built in as a choice. And it also has a great effect in that it helps the DM focus. Because it means once the DM has chosen the villain they're going to use, the DM doesn't then have to try to ingest the entire book. The DM can just focus on, all right, I need to understand the bits of the book that are about this villain, this season, and then if I want to delve into the others, I can read those next.
Right.
So it also makes the book more digestible. And again, this is something we do in Undermountain as well, where, again, you only need to know the one level you're about to delve into. So it's going to make, I think both books will make DM prep pretty easy.
Without spoiling, I'm not going to tell you. Spoil it. Spoil everything. But in Dungeon of the Mad Mage, how insane is this going to get? Because I think it's very easy for people who don't know the history of what's underneath of Undermountain, how crazy things can get, because it's not like, it's not like a dungeon with like, it says stones and torches and there's like gates you have to open. Right. It gets so much more intense and strange.
Yeah,
and
it gets more bizarre sort of the deeper you go down. So what seems like a very normal dungeon on like the first level, you start to see the introduction of weirder and weirder things as the deeper you go. But Undermountain has such a long history. A number of different kingdoms or creatures have lived down there over the years or added to it or built on it. Sections of the dungeon were built by the Drow. Other sections were sort of carved out by dwarves in Duergar. And then, of course, Hallister and his apprentices went down there and did a bunch of shenanigans. There have been lost Yuan-Ti societies down there, all kinds of crazy stuff. And then the deeper you go, you realize, oh, there were like Minotaur civilizations down here. And, oh, there's a Mind Flayer colony rocking down here. And then there's just some completely off-the-wall stuff. This is a bit of a spoiler, but anybody who's familiar with some of the old Undermountain products will know that this is here. So I'm sort of spoiling it, but I'm sort of not. And that is that one of the levels of Undermountain has a gateway to an asteroid that orbits the planet Toril in this string of asteroids called the Tears of Selûne. So you spend part of the adventure on an asteroid fighting the stuff that's currently living there, which I won't spoil.
But how do they breathe, Chris? How do they breathe?
That is all covered in the adventure, Adam.
Whoa!
Hey,
we have a side
stranger. Who is that strange
that weird
creature?
It smells trashy in here.
She heard asteroid and she was like, how do I go?
One of the inhabitants of Waterdeep.
Yes.
Presently.
Yes.
That totally threw me off my game. Thank you,
Yeah.
Holly.
I mean, yeah, so again, for anyone who's not familiar with Undermountain, in some ways it is like a museum of dungeons.
Yes.
It is almost like
good way to look at it.
if it were an amusement park, you could go into a lobby and there would be posters of like, do you want the Mind Flayer dungeon experience? Do you
Yeah.
want the Drow dungeon experience? And then you choose and you go in and you have it.
It's D&D Disneyland.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's riddled with Easter eggs. It crosses the streams a little bit by introducing themes from other worlds and other settings. And there's lots of foreshadowing. So you might find something on level 6 that only becomes relevant or significant on level 22.
All right. Sorry.
Yeah, how many levels are actually detailed in the book
So
itself?
23 levels of Undermountain are detailed, plus the satellite settlement of Skullport, which for those who are familiar with the setting knows is a subterranean town that is sort of attached to the third level of Undermountain that has been at various periods of history occupied by pirates, drow, criminals, and all kinds of bad folk.
Okay.
And is currently the base of operations for the Xanathar Guild.
Speaking of Xanathar, maybe you don't relate to any of the villains, these 4 major villains, but all right, Jeremy, who do you think Chris Perkins is amongst the villains?
We're going there.
Let me
It's
switch
pretty
this up.
personal.
And Chris, you get to do the same, naturally.
Because, wait, are we spoiling who the villains are?
Well, I think we've known.
Yeah,
There's a
we
giant poster over there.
we kind of spilled the
Looking
beans a
at
little
it.
at the stream of many eyes.
So in the D&D department for over a decade, we have often speculated that Chris is a clone. So I'm going to for Chris, I'm going to choose Manchun.
Oh, that does make
That's pretty apt. That's pretty apt.
That makes the
Yeah.
most sense. In fact, he could be the Moriarty from Star
Right.
Trek Next Generation,
Although people
Manchun.
think I look like the art of Jarl Axel.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
but, yeah,
You should do some cosplay at some point
Yeah.
for Jarl Axel.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a cipher. So is Manchun.
Yeah, I can see that. We need to get you that gauntlet.
Yes, I need a Thanos gauntlet.
You need,
Yes.
and I know what you would do with it. So,
yeah, it would be bad.
What would Jeremy be?
I gotta say, Jarl Axel.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
He said thank you. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Thank you for not saying
flattering.
Xanathar.
yeah. This sort of very colorful, well-spoken, erudite, dashing.
Nice.
Oh, I'm going to
Wow.
blush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
is
what
blushing.
it says on his LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And he's a smart cookie, that Jarl Axel.
What was that like to bring Jarl Axel with all of that history? I've read, 20 plus books with Jarl Axel in it probably at this point. What was that like to bring him back into one of these adventures?
We've never actually featured him or any other sort of major novel antagonist from Bob Salvatore's books before. For me, it was just, so I've always been enamored with Jarl Axel because he's so iconoclastic. He's the anti-Dritzt, the other drow who doesn't behave like a drow in a lot of respects. And he's just a complex villain. He's also the type of villain that you can really, really kind of love. Of all the villains in the Dragon Heist story, he's the one most likely to end up as the party's friend, which is an uncharacteristic role, and one we've never really showed off in a 5th edition adventure before. So the other thing I like about him is you never really know the depths of his plotting. So he's always 10 steps ahead of you in any chess game. And so just that kind of level of smart villain always intrigues me. Now, I was personally nervous because I wanted to make sure he was treated right. I didn't want to despoil the character in any way or have Bob come at me with a machete at some future con.
Wait, here comes Bob running right now.
There he is. He's rushing. Charge.
But I felt like, Jarl Axel's motivations in this particular story are unique to this story, but they make sense in terms of his character and his current role in the world and in the political landscape of the North.
And actually, one of the things I love about Jarl Axel's role in the book is everything having to do with him is a great example of that toy box element. I don't want to spoil too much, but he has
Go
an
ahead.
entire group
Yeah.
that a DM could actually reuse over and over again, and not just in Waterdeep because they travel around. So Jarl Axel and his group could end up being a recurring element in
Right.
any FR campaign.
Yes.
Because of just the nature of what they're doing in this city, what they might be doing in other
Yeah.
cities.
One of the cool things about the Dragon Heist story is after you've chosen your villain, like you alluded to, doesn't mean that the other villains aren't around, but in Jarl Axel's case, he can intrude upon another villain's story as an ally. So
As an ally with the villain or with the
with
party?
the characters.
Okay.
Right.
Because
Characters.
he's not the villain of the
It's
story.
not in his best
so
interest.
now he is
Yeah.
helping the characters thwart the villain. It's a very, very interesting role for him.
Xanathar I'm in love with just because of the goldfish. That could have been
yes.
such a one-note villain,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
you give him this little thing, and I kind of love him now.
Yes.
Even though he'd probably kill a lot of people.
In a way, it's sort
Yes.
of,
Plus
And he
the
has
anxiety,
killed a lot of
the
people.
anxiety
Yes.
of constantly having to swap it out.
Yes.
Like, I think I've known people where you just have to be on, like, tiptoes.
yeah. So the fish idea came out of one of the earliest discussions we had about the Dragon Heist story. As soon as we knew it was going to be based in Waterdeep, we knew the Xanathar was going to play some role.
Yeah.
We didn't know at the time he was going to be the villain, but one of our first consultants that we brought out was Charlie Sanders, who's a DM, loves the game. He is a writer. He was a writer on Key and Peele, so he's
Yeah.
got comedy chops. And we were brainstorming with him what the Xanathar's criminal organization looked like and felt like. And one of the things we decided was to humanize the Xanathar and also add an element of chaos to the organization by saying that the only thing he really loves is this dumb fish.
Right.
And if the characters ever capture the fish or kill the fish, it would drive the Xanathar into such a rage that he would basically turn on his own organization and vaporize everybody. And so that's
man.
one way that you can sort of deal with the Xanathar.
That's a horrible moral quandary to kill the goldfish, right?
It's
though?
it is
Right,
a bit of a moral
right.
quandary,
Yep.
and Dragon Heist has a lot of moral quandaries.
I can see that as being its own heist film within a heist film where you
Yes.
grab the goldfish and
Fish
you're just
heist.
running. Fish heist,
Yes.
yeah.
We actually did an illustration for the Dragon Heist book, which shows an adventurer stealing the fish.
The halfling
and
with the
Xanathar
goldfish.
chasing behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be my route.
Yeah.
And all of this with Silgar the goldfish and Xanathar, it's a great example how our books also cross-pollinate because it was actually work on Dragon Heist going on that partially influenced then the prominence of Xanathar and the goldfish in Xanathar's Guide to Everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even though that book came out last year, it was actually influenced by work we were doing on Dragon Heist.
And I love that you get the flavor of how Xanathar's mind works by reading the little the footnotes.
Yep.
Oh my god.
Yes.
that's-
Matt Sternett wrote those, right?
Yes.
And they're one of my favorite parts of the Xanathar's Guide book because when you're cracking open the book for the first time, it's an easy access point into the material, and it really gives you a flavor of what this character in D&D is like.
Yeah, if a DM ends up picking Xanathar as the villain in Dragon Heist, reading all those quotes in Xanathar's Guide to Everything is actually a fantastic way to get into the insane mind of that beholder.
Yes.
Right.
We also had some contributors on the book, some of the writers that have been gaining some prominence in the community. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I sure can. So the DM's Guild is one of our primary methods of letting people basically share their content with other people in the community. And we plunder the DM's Guild for writers. And with Dragon Heist, we hired two writers, James Introcaso and James Hake, to basically work with me on writing the manuscript for the first book. And then when it came time to set up writing on Dungeon of the Mad Mage, we went back to DM's Guild and also to our Adventurers League, which is another venue we have for cultivating talent. And we plundered, 12
Wow.
writers from that to help us tackle the various levels of Undermountain. I have to admit that it's easier to work with 2 writers at a time than 12, but it all worked out in the end. And I think that the experiences that they gain from writing on these products is going to make their work on DM's Guild and Adventurers League even better.
And you had a friend too that you got to work with.
I don't have any friends.
Oh.
No, go.
See,
You are not his friend. You are not.
Sorry, who are you referring to?
Well, not me. There was another guy. Matt.
Oh, that guy, yeah.
Matt Mercer.
So we had another consultant on the Dragon Heist story, a remarkable fellow, an up-and-comer.
He's all right.
A few people might have heard of him.
I think the kid's going to be great.
Named Matthew Mercer.
Yeah.
Who I am 100% in love with, and he and I had a great time just brainstorming or fleshing out the villains for Dragon Heist and giving them multi-dimensions. And so we brought him in for a week to basically help us crack some nuts on the Dragon Heist story and pick his brain about a number of things while he was here. And so without his contributions, I don't think Dragon Heist would have been quite so magical as it ended up.
Now, you did stat blocks and you did magical items and stuff.
Yes. So yeah, pretty much if any D&D book has any rule in it whatsoever, then that is my baby.
You just Hulk out.
And so I worked on all of the monsters, NPCs, magic items in both Dragon Heist and Catacomb. And I was joined in that work, working for me, by Kate Welch and Ben Petrosor, both of whom are on our staff. And then both books have been polished by editors, some of whom have worked on the game for decades, and then also some of whom are new to the game. So both books, well, Dragon Heist had Michelle Carter, who's been working on D&D for decades, Kim Mohan, who many people know, going all the way back to first edition. Wes Schneider is working with us now as an editor. Matt Click and Scott Fitzgerald Gray, all doing work on these books to help take something that's beautiful and make it shine as much as it can.
Right.
Yeah. One of the things we did with these books is we got two artists whose styles complement each other to do the covers. Tyler Jacobson, who's done a number of covers for us, did Dragon Heist, and then Cynthia Shepard, who is one of the art directors on the Magic team,
right,
and a gifted illustrator in her own right, graciously offered up her time to do the Dungeon of the Mad Mage cover.
That art is nuts.
And stylistically, they sort of mirror each other. In their compositions. Yeah.
I think we're about out of time. I'm going to ask one more question. This one's going to be a little hard, probably. So, for Dragon Heist and Dungeon of the Mad Mage, if you had to describe them with one word,
oh God,
just one word, what would you use? I did it, folks. I did it.
Complete.
That's great.
That's a terrible word. Balloon. No, I don't know.
My one word for Dungeon
Classic.
of the Mad Mage would be bonkers.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
I like that.
nice. That's a good word.
I like that word.
It.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Dragon Heist would be money.
Yeah, money.
I like that much better.
You heard it here. Money, money, money from Chris Perkins. We are out of time. Thank you guys so much for joining us.